In this video, we're going to analyze an opinion article using the ARG conditions. So type in the Google search string, who should be allowed to compete as a female athlete. That will call up an article published in the New York Times on July 28, 2015. It's written by Roger Pielke, Jr., who is a part of the Center for Science and Technology Policy Research at University of Colorado, Boulder. So I'd like you to read this article and go through it. First, number the paragraphs 1 through 13, and identify the premises and the conclusion, any unstated premises, and then try and draw a map for how the premises are put together to lead to the conclusion. So go ahead and do that now, and when you come back, you will have read the article and you'll have your attempt at it, and we'll start looking at how I put this together. In analyzing the article using the ARG conditions, the first thing that we do is identify the premises. The premises can be sometimes a little bit difficult to identify because the paragraphs that you find in the article do not always contain a premise. And in this article, what I found is I didn't see the first premise until paragraph 6. So let's put that first premise down. But before we do that, let's put a little background in for this article, which is contained for the most part in the first 5 paragraphs. I actually had to consult another source to see exactly a little bit more detail about the background. So the International Association of Athletics Federation, the IAAF, was given 2 years by the Court of Arbitration for Sport, which is the governing body for competitions in athletics, to come up with a new policy for excluding women from sport, from competing in sports when they have a high testosterone level. This was the case with the person who brought the suit, a very talented 19-year-old female sprinter, Dute Shand, who has naturally high testosterone. So the court said to the IAAF, you have 2 years to come up with definitive proof that if a woman has naturally high testosterone, that gives her an unfair advantage to compete. So with that background, let's start listing the premises in the article. So premise 1 is that science does not provide definitive guidelines. We find this premise in paragraph 6. If we look at a quote from the court that is cited in there, it says this, that the expert, or the judge said this, the expert witnesses each relied on different published papers to support his or her view, but no single study has established to an appropriate level of certainty a scientific basis to come to a definitive conclusion one way or the other about whether the high testosterone level provides an unfair advantage. So the court is saying no, there's no definitive proof. This leads to the second premise. This second premise comes in paragraph 9, and it is that the male-female system of athletics categorization is inconsistent with the biological reality that sex in humans is on a continuum, meaning that how one determines sex, such as by testosterone level or other markers, it's not black and white. And so we should actually, in this case, again, quote the court. The court finds itself in the invidious position of having to reconcile the existence of a binary male-female system of athletics competition with the biological reality that sex in humans is a continuum with no clear single boundary between men and women. So this premise that I'm stating here is essentially a restatement of what the court said, and it's a second premise that the author is using in this article. So premise 3 comes in the third paragraph from the end, and it is that gender is a better indication than sex. Then premise 4, that using the social criterion gender to determine eligibility to compete for female athletes is similar to using another social indicator, nationality. The article goes on to talk about how a nationality as an indicator is something that has very rigorous guidelines for determining whether one can compete under a certain nationality. So I put there in parentheses that there are rigorous guidelines in sport for determining nationalities. Let's go on to premise 5 on the next blackboard. And so this fifth and final premise is unstated. It is that sufficiently rigorous guidelines for determining gender could be determined. And I'm going to put in parentheses here a side note from the Court of Arbitration. That is, despite this dispute about high testosterone level, the court said definitively, well, the person bringing the suit, Dute Chand, is a woman. So let's go now to the conclusion. So the author, in coming up with the conclusion, is talking about what a new policy for determining eligibility for female athletes should look like. He says that a new policy should be gender-based, and he offers this guideline that if the woman participates in athletic events as a woman at what's called the junior level, pre-puberty, and continues to do so at the senior level, post-puberty, this would be in youth, prior to even getting out of high school, that should be sufficient to her having done that should form the basis of a policy that should be that would classify the athlete as a woman. So what we want to consider is this conclusion warranted from the premises? So let's first construct a diagram of the arguments leading to the conclusion. I have it looking like this. I want you to try and put it together, though. How are the conclusions, or are the premises built upon to lead to the conclusion? So come back when you have done that. So I have it, the structure of the argument looking like this, that premise 1 and 2 and 3 together are necessary to get to the conclusion, and that premises 4 and 5 support premise 3. So let's put up what the premises are. Premise 1 is that science is not definitive in this matter. Premise 2 is that sex, for the purpose of determining that markers for determining it are not possible because sex is on a continuum with respect to how to determine it for competition. Premise 3 that gender is a better indicator than sex, or at least trying to measure sex, and the premises that support that are unstated, that there can be sufficiently rigorous ways to measure gender, and that there's sort of a precedent in using a social criteria like gender for an indicator because it's like nationality, which is a social indicator. Before we get into analyzing the acceptability of the premises, let's look again at the conclusion. Is this the best conclusion that can be drawn? Is it the only conclusion that can be drawn? No, there could be other conclusions drawn. Is it the best? Well, that's not really possible to answer. It's a conclusion that can be drawn. The question that we're trying to answer here first is this conclusion warranted from the premises? So let's talk about their acceptability. The author clearly supports premise 1, that the science is not definitive. He does so in the sixth paragraph. It's actually in the fifth, sixth, and seventh paragraphs. And remember that the author is working for a science policy institute. Premise 2, that sex with respect to how it can be measured is on a continuum. That's well supported. The court actually said that they agree with this, or that they find this, especially with respect to testosterone, as a measure of sex, and this is in paragraphs 8 and 9. Premise 3, that gender is a better indicator than sex. Now, this is a premise that is put forth by the author, is supported by two other premises, that it's like using nationality, which is a social indicator, gender being a social indicated socially, and that there could be sufficiently rigorous ways to test gender. And then the structure of the argument is that all three of these premises together, so if we remove the science not being definitive, or remove sex being on a continuum, or we remove gender being a better indicator, we're not able to get to the conclusion that here's a way the conclusion that here's how we ought to decide whether one is eligible to compete as a woman. Now, premises 1 and 2 are very well supported, that gender is a better indicator. This is something that is decided by the author, who has expertise in the area. Whether this is the only alternate way to do so, I think is arguable. That is the weakest point of the argument, that gender is the way to measure eligibility, and this is based on the authors saying, well, the science isn't going to work because we have something that's not black and white, it's gray, so let's use a marker that we can use, and offers a way in the conclusion that this could be used. So if the author had said in the conclusion that this is the way we should do it, if someone has competed at the junior level and the senior level, this would be like ages 10 through 17 or something like that. As a female, that qualifies them to participate at the elite level as a female athlete. He's not saying that's exactly what the policy should be. He's saying this should form the basis of a policy. So given that he's not making too strong of a statement, he's only saying here's what the basis of a new policy should be, a gender-based policy, and he offers one up. I would consider this to be a strong argument. Obviously, if the author had come up with a better policy, perhaps we could consider it to be a stronger argument, but this is going to be something where I think the author was right in not going further than that. He's saying here's a foundation for the new policy. Let's have lots of other people think it through. Let's have the courts weigh in on it. I'm just offering this up as what I think is a way to proceed. And with that qualification in his conclusion, I think it's fair to call this a strongly supported argument. The other parts of the ARG conditions are all of the premises relevant to the conclusion. Yes, I think that's clear that they all are relevant. Even the one that's sort of off track, the nationality premise, is used as an analogous way to support that social criteria are acceptable in this arena. And then the G part of ARG is the argument grounded. Yes, it is. We find that there is good support in the combination of premises 1, 2, and 3 for coming up with an alternate way to determine whether someone's eligible to compete. And so there are no logical flaws in this argument. So it comes out overall to be a well a supported argument under using the ARG conditions to evaluate that and come up with that conclusion. So this ends this video where we analyze this article using the ARG conditions.